Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
I was just sloppily drinking water.
Yes, you were.
Accidentally spilled on me. And Abby's like, oh no, the spot's gone. I was like trying to dry it out.
Well, I said it looks fine. I didn't say the spot's gone.
It's not gone.
Said it looks fine.
When you were a little kid, you used to like get stains on your outfits and you'd be like, I just told my mom I'd pray and it was all gone and no one would see it, right? Like,
no, the story was my mom would be like, hey, your clothes are stained. They'd be like grass stains or something, or they'd have holes in it. And I'd be like, it's okay, Mom. I prayed that when I left, no one would be able to see it.
Yeah, that is no logic. But I love the faith in a little child like that.
Yeah, so cute.
Yeah. Anyways, before we get started, I just wanted to take a second to talk about your feet.
Oh, no.
Your feet have been a central controversy in some situations.
Oh, yeah. We posted a reel.
No, hold on. I want to tell this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And there's a lot more to this. So we posted a reel recently of you preaching online, and somebody was definitely offended by the idea that you were not wearing shoes preaching on a stage.
Yep.
It was heavily offensive.
Many people.
Yeah, they were like, oh, what's happening?
Messages and
So disrespectful.
comments and
What is
DMs.
this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. Like, are her feet causing people to stumble? Like, but then I thought about this because you are on a sexy foot fetish website.
Oh my gosh.
Someone has stolen your pictures off the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. Someone shared that with us.
Yes.
Which I'm like, how did you end up?
How did you know? How did you find this?
And it was like public figures and their feet. And like Abby Stumball popped up on there. And I'm like, okay, was it that they researched your name randomly on the internet and found it?
Uh-huh.
Or
were they looking for famous people's feet?
Mm-hmm.
My feet didn't get a great rating, and I am not confused about that because my feet, I've broken so many toes so many times.
Yeah.
And then I have psoriasis on my feet, and then I have calluses. I have these weird calluses because I need to fold my toes down. Like it brings me comfort to fold my toes down. One time a doctor said that they thought that it was because maybe like the tendons in my ankles were tight or something, and that like doing that actually helped relieve pain in my feet.
Somebody said you had raptor feet.
Did somebody on the internet?
Because I think your toes were hanging off the edge.
They were curling on the edge.
Curling or something.
I know.
I know. What's she doing with her raptor feet on that?
You know, it's a good thing that I've like fully accepted myself and been like, they are what they are.
They are what they are.
They are what they are. But I did get a good kick out of how controversial it was that I wasn't wearing shoes.
Feet. Yeah.
And I like part of me wanted to explain because I think it's fun being understood. And then part of me was like, it's not even worth it.
Yeah.
But the real reason I was preaching barefoot is because I brought shoes that I was going to preach in that went really well with my outfit to the church. And started having, I was preaching for the first time since I've had PTSD on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I was having anxiety about it. And I started having anxiety about my shoes because they were high heels.
Oh, yeah.
And I was feeling like, what if I fall? What if like, I'm already having anxiety about talking. And I was like, to set myself up for success, I'm not going to wear shoes right now so that I don't even think about my shoes. I don't think about walking. I don't think about falling. I don't think about tripping so that I can be as present as I can to work through all my other anxiety. So I kind of wanted to be like, I'm not even making a statement here. I was just trying to manage my internal world as I'm stepping back into something to be brave, people.
You know,
but I was like, nobody deserves to know that except our listeners.
Yeah. You know what made me laugh? Well, historically, I would have thought these people are assholes. What is their problem?
You would have thought that in the past.
But there's someone that I've followed for the last couple of years, and he calls people rascals.
Rascals.
And he's like, people are just rascals. They really are. Yeah. And I'm like, that's such a lighthearted way to put it. And my offense no longer exists on stuff like that.
And you call yourself a rascal.
I am a little rascal.
You're like, I'm doing some rascally things.
But it's so much less judgment in it and less offense. And
see, and I didn't even take offense. I just thought, oh.
And for me, I'm just saying in general, there's less offense. But in that situation, I would have historically wanted to be like, you're an idiot. Like, why is this a problem? Like, what world are you living in? And then, but I don't have that anymore. So mostly I was just like, what a little rascal. A little rascal. What an interesting person who's very fired up about something that's very silly. Like, this does not make any sense to me. I was like, I have liked the way I've matured.
I feel proud of you. I feel really proud of you. You had a lot of judgment in your life for a long time. And you had a lot of like, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
And you have really softened internally. It's not just external management. It's that you're starting to see people with compassion.
Well, and part of it, and that's what we're going to get into.
Because you realize you're so screwed up that you should judge no one.
Yeah. I mean, that plays a role in it, but it's part of what we're talking about today, actually, because we're going to get into our 4F trauma responses.
Yes.
And trauma responses in general.
Yep.
And for me, the more that I've gotten safe inside of my own body and gotten healed in the area of trauma, the less I go into the 4F response of fight.
Yes.
So judgment for me was definitely like lumped into my fight response. So when I felt threatened, I'd be like, you're an idiot and let's go to battle.
It's true. There'd be some kind of sense of threat.
Yeah.
And then you would react by getting big.
Yeah, getting big and to get big and to get, aggressive internally, that 4F response needs reasoning.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where the reasoning comes in. And I go, there's a reason for this. It's because
you're the reason.
You're an asshat and you're dangerous and you need to be dealt with.
Right. So let's talk about the 4F response. What does 4F even mean? We say it 4F because those are the 4F words.
The 4F words.
The 4F words, which is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, which I love alliteration. And I love that they came up with 4Fs so that we could remember the 4 responses.
And I like the addition of the fawn response because for a long time, no one saw that as a 4F response.
Yeah.
Which people, as we're talking, are probably going to be enlightened.
Yeah. So we all have trauma responses innately, and we can move it down because I think trauma is such a spectrum, because I also just think when there's normal triggers, I go into the 4Fs.
Yeah,
so I don't think it has to be a trauma, but we're all wired where our body reacts for us. Our body reacts. So oftentimes our subconscious is what notices a threat before our conscious does.
Yeah.
We're scanning our environment at all times. This is our primal primitive brain. In order to keep us surviving on the planet, we're scanning at all times, looking for any signs of threat. And if we notice a sign of threat, then our body is made to activate into a behavior to try to protect itself. And our body activates into the behavior without us choosing it. So I'm not saying, okay, body, now you need to go into fight, or okay, body, now you need to shut down. I'm not saying any of that. It's automatically happening without my choice. So first of all, when people get triggered, they often feel so much shame and feel mad at themselves for having a reaction. And I'm like,
because they do something that goes against the character of who they are or how they actually want to behave.
Well, I'm not even talking about behavior. I'm just saying having an internal reaction. Like that's not even a choice. That's just
But I'm saying who they normally are, even if it's an internalized one, they're like, this isn't my normal. What is happening inside of me? I have shame about this thing that's just not my norm.
Yes. And so what we have is our body reacts without us telling it to, and then our mind follows. And our mind, as soon as our body has experienced a threat, so we use our 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste. How can I never remember? Touch. So those are the 5 senses, and that's what we're using to discern threat. Touch. So if I'm looking for a threat, now subconsciously we're noticing things. So if Justin starts to look bored, that might register in my nervous system as a threat.
Is it that clear?
It is that clear. And so it might be like, oh my gosh, like there's a threat. Now I need to do something to take care of that threat. And so a million times we're having these little minuscule reactions to threats, and then we're trying to get safe through our 4F behaviors. So it is so valuable for us to learn what our responses are, learn how to notice them and narrate them, because then we don't have to react out of them. We can slow things down as we learn ourselves, as we get self-awareness and we get language for it. We can slow things down, and then we can know exactly what to do, because different threat responses require different threat reactions in order to able to help us. So what do you think about my spiel?
What?
Okay. So I thought we'd start with fight, because that is a great one. And if you think about the reason why, I think it's valuable to explain the reason why our body reacts before we think about it into a trauma response is so that we can quickly get out of danger. So back in the day, if a wildebeest is chasing you.
A wildebeest.
Yeah.
Do you know what a wildebeest is? A wildebeest is not going to chase a human.
What is it? I don't know what it is. I just imagine it's like a buffalo.
Yeah, they don't.
No?
They don't chase people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A cougar?
Bear.
A cougar? A bear. Rawr. A bear is chasing you. You don't want to have your brain take time to think through all of the options. You want your brain to just make your body run. Like that's the reason we have reactions super fast, is so we can survive something. And so that works really well if you're surviving in the wilderness, but it doesn't work very well in relationships, because when I react so fast, I typically am not doing what I want that is healthy in connection for our relationship dynamic. And so we need to learn to slow things down. And part of that is by recognizing our own behavior. So do you have any thoughts you want to share before we jump into the different ones?
No, I would love to just jump into the 4 F's. Fight.
You want to fight me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, going back to the idea of threat, that threat can look in different ways as humans. Like it can be, oh, this feels dangerous, like this person's going to hurt me.
Yes.
Or an expression of a threat is love is being turned off. So you talked about boredom, and it's a sense of like, hey, this person is disconnected from the experience, the connection that we have. I'm feeling exposed in some way, shape, or form. I'm also feeling emotions potentially of rejection, sadness, abandonment.
Well, and belonging is such a deep survival need that if we feel like we're about to be disconnected from somebody, it starts to feel like our survival is in question. So physically.
Yeah. Inside of that, what happens is we're defaulting to something to survive that situation, to maybe get back to what would feel safe or okay or connected or whatever that might be. I know that for me, fight response, it wasn't my number one. It's something that, and we can express all the 4F responses. That's just a side note.
I do all of them.
We do all of them at some level.
I do all of them, I think, equally, I think
that some of them people lean more towards, more heavy-handed towards, depending on their environments they grew up in and stuff like that.
And your personality type and the season you're in.
Yeah. There was a strong leaning towards fawn for me for years. And I thought that was just, I was being a really good kid, or a good student or whatever.
Well, we should explain what fawn is then.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to that.
Oh, okay.
I got that. But I eventually started morphing into fight. And so I'll park on fight for a second. We can go back to fawn. But fight for me, I was in an environment where there was a lot of aggression. When I think of that, I think of the guys that I worked around. So some of the construction guys that I worked around, there was a lot of fight that was inside of them. It wasn't, hey, let's play, let's laugh about this. It was, we're going to get big, we're going to get loud, we're going to become aggressive, we're going to get in each other's faces. That's something that I watched even from my grandfather. He was a guy that was very intense, and guys that worked inside the shop were immediate aggression. And so the idea was, I finally was like, I can tell that I can't win in the scenario of fawn. I'm going to need fight. I'm going to need fight in this environment or I'm going to get destroyed. So immediately I realized that if I got big, I got loud, I got back in someone's I could back them down. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, I have found a solution to get to a sense of safety. And I remember having thoughts of like, I'm not going to let you destroy me. If I get big enough, you're going to get the message. You're going to back off of me. You're going to leave me alone and I'm going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And so fight, I mean, it could come out in loudness. Mm-hmm. It could also come out in poking back. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like an intense, I'm becoming a giant bear or a big truck to run you over. Mm-hmm. It could be like, no, I'm going to go into an aggressive stance and I'm going to keep pushing back and forth until I no longer feel powerless to something that I'm experiencing.
Yeah. Fight is one of those that we instantly mobilize. So people who have fight, when a crisis happens, the good part of fight is when a crisis happens, I'm like, okay, here are the things that we need to do. We need to call 911. We need to get this done. We need to do this. Like I instantly mobilize. That's the awesome part of fight is it gives you energy to react right away. Sometimes I think clearer in fight, which is complicated. Yeah. Because I can get an adrenaline spike, a high of like, da, 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 da. This is what we need to do. This is how we do it. And a lot of people in jobs where they have chaos, but they feel addicted to it, it can be because their system is going into fight in order to make sure things get done, or flight in order to make sure things get done. Fight and flight are both mobilizing ones. They're ones where your energy instantly activates. And so
activate energy.
And so for me, I know like fight can look like lawyering. So I can get into like, no, you said exactly this and this and this. And I said exactly this and this and this. And then you said this and this. And that's why this makes sense.
Oh, is that what you're doing to me all the time?
I own it. I own it on a regular basis. I say, hey, I'm sorry that I lawyered you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you need more validation for it?
Go for it. No, I don't. Not at all.
But lawyering is a form of fight because it is like, if you imagine fight, it's like putting up a shield and aiming your energy as out to get somebody.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people
prove that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to prove that I'm right. And there's often an energy of superiority. And that's why you were saying earlier, your judgment was you going into fight. Yeah. I'm better than you. And that feeling gives me that distance to feel like I can be safe again.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people realize that they're in fight when they go into, like you talked about, lawyer mode. Right. Because a lot of times people are like, no, I'm just having a logical conversation here. I don't know what's wrong with them. But what it's actually
you might not be yelling. You might not be intense.
It doesn't have to seem so aggressive, but it's actually a posture of like, oh, I've become dysregulated. Like I become unsettled. I'm not in a place of peace and settledness inside of me. And now I'm trying to intensely get towards something.
Yeah. I like to think about relationship circuits as like when we're open, we can like connect with each other.
Yeah.
And so we can like both be together. But when we're in fight or flight, freeze or fawn, we like shut down our relationship circuits. So we can't actually connect in the same way. And so a great example of fight would be, and how many people do this on social media, you see something that you disagree with on a reel and you instantly type out a response about that is poking back at them or is like you're wrong or lawyering them. So most of social media,
your feet had some good back and forth on it, some good fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people actually got activated. They felt threatened by my feet.
Yeah.
That's
and people felt
true.
threatened by the people threatened by your feet.
Yes.
There was that as well.
And let's talk about that. So the people who felt threatened by my feet were like,
it's such a ridiculous conversation.
But this is helping people understand.
Yeah, totally.
The threat was that like, I don't know, that I didn't care about the holiness of God or that I was a hippie or that I was being disrespectful. That felt like a threat to what keeps them safe. They're like, my rules say bare feet is unsafe. So they need to go into fight. They mobilized into action. What do I do to protect myself? I'm going to let people know what they're doing is wrong because that will help protect me. That'll help me feel safer in the world again. Then you have the people who are watching those comments that are like, it's stupid that you care this much about her feet. What is wrong with you? They feel the sense of either they feel the injustice of why do you care? They feel protective energy over me.
They love you.
Or they feel the threat of your rules feel crazy.
Yeah,
and like that feels crazy.
And it represents also all the other crazy people who had crazy rules in my world
their life
that have impacted me negatively.
And so we mobilize into,
and we can all identify with this.
Yes. We mobilize into, I need to do something about it and I'm going to do this right now.
Yes.
And so, and we're not saying having a voice like that is powerful and you can push back and disagree against people. So we're not saying that, but it's good to notice. And when I started recognizing my body, I'm like, I'm just a little bit more, there's a little bit more flutters inside and there is a fast. I feel way more impulsive in fights.
Yeah, I have to respond to this very quickly.
I need to send 10 texts now so that you know how I feel.
The minute I feel that energy now in life, especially we'll use the internet as the example because we're parking on social media. The minute I am typing something out and I feel that energy in my body, I go, nope, I delete, I walk away and I go, I'll revisit this later today. If this is actually a conversation that I want to participate in that has purpose to it, once I have clarity and I'm not in this energy. And if I revisit again and I start feeling that energy, I'm deleting it again. And I've revisited some things multiple times and I'm like, nope, still in that energy. And then by the time I'm done, I'm like, I don't even need to have a conversation. Why would I waste my time on that? You're not going to change anyone's mind on the internet.
Well, and here's the thing is a lot of us are in that fast reacting response. Yeah. And anytime it's fast, slowing it down, like you're saying, that's why when we can recognize I'm in fight or flight, that helps you know, what do I need to do? I need to slow my pace down. So when we're in fights and I go into fight, because that's one, we both go into fight. We both go into all of them in fights, to be honest. But fight is one we can both get into. So what we have to do a lot of times is stop talking.
Like, hey,
let's take a time out. Let's pause our conflict. Let's walk away and let's get our body out of that heightened sense of energy. Because when our body's in that heightened sense of energy, it's almost like an anxiety that is pushing you to do behavior that isn't actually your authentic self. And then you're reacting instead of responding.
Yeah, I don't think almost is a way to put it. It is anxiety in your body that is definitely pushing us through it. And that's never, like operating out of fear and anxiety is never going to lead to connection. It just isn't. It's not possible. Like fear in and of itself is at the core of it, a disconnection. Yeah. So it's not going to help. So you're better off just like going on your own journey.
That's so true.
Coming back around.
Yeah. So fight looks like fast responses. I'm getting bigger, or I'm trying to push you off, or I'm trying to prove you wrong. And I want you maybe to be little, or I want to be aggressive towards you. When you start honking your horn in traffic because you're mad at somebody, that's fight.
Yeah. Like the lady the other day who was screaming, "Eat a D, you mother effer," and flipping the person off in front of me. And I was like, what is happening? She was in the passenger door and she was screaming it. And I was like, I do not know what I just stumbled into. But this lady is in some fight up in here.
That's funny.
I looked her straight in the eyes and she looked at me and I was like, smiled. And she's like, furled her lip, and then they drove off.
Away. That's funny. Yeah, that sounds like fight. Yep. So one thing I want to say before moving on, and we'll go to flight next, is that I don't villainize when I go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, because they're natural body responses. So I'm not choosing them. It's not when I go into it, am I good or bad? It's what do I do with it? It's natural to have these responses. And again, they're very beneficial. They're there to protect me. They're there to help me. They're there to let me know I'm feeling threatened. Half the time, I don't notice that something you did hurt my feelings until I notice that thing inside of me want to be like, ah! Like it's almost like an energy that wants to go whoosh. I will bite your head off. And when I feel that energy on the inside, I'm like, oh, something must have just made me feel like he didn't care. Or something must have just made me feel like he was going to abandon me or was going to leave me alone. And when I notice that, then I can get to my vulnerable feelings. So it's a good flag for us.
One of the things that, like, when we start having a conversation about the 4F, becoming aware of the 4Fs, actually that self-awareness starts telling us, hey, there's something to be taken care of inside of me. One of the things that I think people believe is that my response is natural. What I mean by natural is
so good, Justin.
It's justifiable or whatever. So I blew up. I'm like, yeah, of course I blew up because this idiot just cut me off inside of traffic. And and we believe that how we're responding is who we are. And this is legitimate for this experience. And it's okay to have emotions about it, but our reactions, once we realize like, oh, this is a 4F response, then we can stop reacting and start responding, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I think about freeze. So for years, I didn't realize what was going on inside of me. I wasn't aware of it. And we would have escalated difficulties.
Oh my gosh.
In conflict.
This was like, if we could rewind and start our marriage over, this one piece of information would have changed everything.
Yeah. So I didn't know I was in freeze. I would gridlock. Freeze would lock me completely down. You would be asking me questions in the middle of a disagreement or a fight. Let's just call it what it is at times. It was a full-blown fight. And you're like, well, what do you think about this? I'm like, I don't think anything about it. And then it would continue. You'd escalate in frustration on your end. I'd escalate in anxiety in my body, but I wasn't aware of any of it. I just was aware of like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get these answers out to her? There's something broken about me.
Yeah, I think you felt like you were broken.
Yes. I felt very broken. But when the highlight came that, oh, this is called freeze. This is what happens when anxiety gets turned up and you get overwhelmed. You get flooded with cortisol and you end up tipping over into shutdown. And my whole being was shutting down.
Your body shuts down to protect you. It's like your emotions are getting overwhelmed. And your body is like, we can't handle more. So it literally shuts down so that you don't get overwhelmed. And I think if we imagine fight and freeze, like fight, if you think about animals, and you think about a lion, if it feels like you're coming after its cub, it's going to go after you so that you don't come after its cub. That's one way to protect yourself to survive in the animal kingdom. Another way would be like a turtle who just like sucks into the shell. So or like an animal that plays dead. That's another way of imagining freeze.
Or an armadillo that rolls up into a ball.
Yeah. It's like, it's a way to protect themselves. They're like, this will protect me. And so your body, when it starts to feel too many feelings, it'll just shut you down into freeze. And I thought for years, and this is why it helped us so much, you were able to recognize you're not bad. And there's something going on that makes sense. Yeah. And I was able to realize, I thought you were just stubbornly being cold. Yeah. I thought you were being like emotionally vacant. Like you were choosing not to respond to me. You were just coldly neglecting our relationship. Yeah. It felt so painful to me and rejecting and like emotional abandonment, and you couldn't explain it. And so I thought, and you couldn't get out of it. So it felt like you were stubbornly choosing. When it hurt my feelings or I'd feel sad about it, it wasn't like you could then meet me in it because you were locked down. Yeah. And so I thought that you were purposefully. Now, imagine the experience. Let's imagine you as an armadillo. You are locking down. Yeah. So my experience is that you locked down. Instantly, your warmth is gone. Instantly, your connection is gone. Instantly, our camaraderie is gone. So it does feel like a huge threat to me. It feels like, what is happening? But for you, you're not purposely doing anything towards me. No. You're just trying to stay in that ball so that you don't get destroyed.
Yeah. And what would happen? And I think if I had noticed I was in freeze a lot earlier on, there would have been less fight out of me. Because what usually happened, the pattern would happen is that when my system felt like it was being assaulted some way in the way that you were engaging me, whatever that was.
You felt threat from how I was reacting.
From how you're reacting. I start freezing. I don't know why I'm freezing. I don't know that I am freezing. I just know I no longer have access to major parts of my brain and my emotions. And I feel like I am on the other side of an icy wall or a glass wall. Like, I don't know how to get out. I don't know how to get out. And I also don't know how to have this conversation. So my anxiety is build. And it feels like the threat is poke until finally I'm like, I have to get out of here. And the explosion happens. I'm like, leave me the F alone. Because it's blowing through this big, thick thing of glass or ice and exploding through it. And now I'm in fight. And now fight has taken over my whole body.
Well, we could imagine freeze as, in this analogy, as like an ice wall. And then you use fight, which is like a firebomb.
Yeah.
And you like firebomb through the ice wall.
Yeah.
And then there's fire damage everywhere.
Yeah. Totally. And that like, if I had known, again, if we had known from the get-go what was happening, that would have changed everything about the way that we exchange difficulties from the get-go.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it would have been perfect, but then, because even now, the way that we do our exchanges of conflict, I'll say, hey, I can tell that I'm starting to freeze up inside. And your compassion is more easily for you to take on, because you're like, this isn't about him trying to disconnect from me.
Yeah.
This is about, there is
his threat response happened.
That's kicking in, and he's battling with that, and he wants to get out. He cares about connection. He wants to get back to me.
And see, I don't take it personally. It doesn't mean that I caused the threat if you go into freeze.
Sure.
So that's why I don't have to feel defensive. Like if I see you going into freeze, because we all have a million threats happening all the time that our bodies react to without us choosing, from our past
perceived
pain,
or real. Yeah.
Perceived or real. And so he might be perceiving that that my tone of voice meant a threat when really I was just constipated. I'm just kidding. But like there's a lot of miscommunications that create threats for us.
Yeah.
And so exactly what you're saying is, now when you say, but you have learned to say, I'm going into freeze, but I care about you.
Yeah.
And that instantly brings down, because then what happens is I don't feel the ice wall, the stone walling, because I think feeling stonewalled is one of the most powerless feelings. So what would happen is you would go into armadillo lockdown. I would feel stonewalled out with no ability. So I would then that would initiate
warrior energy.
Let's say that I had threat to begin with.
Yeah.
And then you stonewall, and then I get bigger because I'm like, oh, I have to get back to connection. Now we do it in silly ways. Like our body reacts in silly ways. So like if I logically think I want connection with Justin, I should get angry at him to get it. Like there's no logic in that, but that's what our bodies logic out. It's like, I don't feel safe. I don't feel protected from you stonewalling me. So I'm going to get big and be like, you can't stonewall me.
Yeah.
And then it created a mess.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe what freeze feels like in your body?
Yeah. I mean, freeze, there's this deep, like my chest starts getting really tense. I can feel like this butterflies in my stomach right here. My shoulders and my neck will tense up in this area.
So your body braces and freeze.
Yeah, there's like a bracing that starts happening. My breathing starts getting very shallow for me. I'm just breathing right in this space. I'm not getting a deep breath any longer in it. Also in freeze, I feel like, I said this earlier, but an access point to my brain is just gone. It's wiped.
Yeah.
So it's wiped clear. And I'm like having an argument. I should be able to access this stuff. And as I start to freeze, then I even try to, it's almost like a mixture of fawn comes in, because I start asking myself, just just, what is the answer? Give me an answer. Give me an answer. We need to give an answer. But it's it's a very frantic energy to get to something to end the experience that I'm having.
So it's like a prison inside yourself.
Yes. I feel incredibly trapped.
Yeah.
And there's been times where that freeze response goes to such intense levels that I can literally, this is what it's like. There's nothing happening externally. And I am screaming, open your mouth and say something.
Yeah, but your body has locked you down.
It's full lockdown. I cannot get my mouth to open. And I know that there's been times where I would be battling internally to get to say to you, I'm in freeze.
Yeah.
And that's all I can do is just barely get that. And it even feels maddening and panic inducing, the fact that I can't get the words out.
Totally.
So the more that I can't get it out, the more the snowball, it's that snowball effect that snowball starts down the mountain, and all of a sudden it's this giant explosive downhill, what do they call them when all the snow comes down? Avalanche.
Yeah.
Words.
You freeze right now?
No. Avalanche. Yeah.
Yeah. I think freeze feels very different for me than it does for you.
Yeah.
Freeze feels like there is concrete in my body. Like my whole body doesn't want to move. Like when I'm in freeze, I want to lay in bed all day and put the covers around me. And I am like, I'm just in complete lockdown. Now looking back, I don't think I was depressed for years. I think my body was going into cycles of freeze.
Interesting.
And I didn't understand, because what freeze makes me want to do is lie. It's very similar to what animals do. So animals, when they're being hunted, they might go into freeze, play dead, and they play dead long enough till they think the danger is gone.
Yeah.
So what will happen to me is maybe the threat would be, this would be a realistic threat growing up. I said something that I thought that people might think was stupid.
Oh.
That could be enough of a threat for me. Like I just said something and I imagined that people thought it was stupid. So the threat is love's going to be removed. They're going to think I'm bad. They're going to think I'm weird. They're going to belonging's going to disappear. Now I wasn't conscious of all of that.
You were a weird little kid.
I was a weird little kid. But so, I would then have, I could spend days where I was just in bed, barely moving, couldn't activate my brain, couldn't do life stuff, couldn't clean the refrigerator and cook food. It was like, I just need to, and it was basically like, I need to lay until this passes.
Interesting.
Was the feeling that I had. And I will still have that. And sometimes in freeze, it's like everything is quicksand on the inside, or concrete, or it's like walking through molasses. Life is walking through molasses. A lot of times in freeze, I want to get containment. I want to hide under the bed, or I want to hide under my covers, or I want to get in the bathtub, or I want to crawl into my closet. It is that typically what I do to help me out of freeze is think through, what does my body want to do to mirror the freeze? So what is the thing that my body is needing? And that helps me. It helps my body get out of the freeze to do it. So my body wants to feel like it's under the covers laying in bed. So I will actually say, I'm going to go lay under the covers, under the bed. But instead of doing it mindlessly, like I used to do for a couple days at a time, now I'm doing it consciously. I'm under the covers. I'm in bed. I'm safe. I'm getting to do what my body needs while it's in freeze. Body, I see you. You're safe. I'm protecting you. And then I start to become aware of, look at how safe it is that my covers can cover me. Look at how safe it is that I have a bed. Look at how safe it is. I'm surrounded in this safe room. And that helps my body just start to come out. The other thing is, if you think about freeze, it's so fight and flight activate you to being mobilized. Freeze deactivates you into shutdown. So you're immobilized. So moving can be hard. Thinking can be hard. Making decisions can be hard.
Yeah.
And so people can get stuck in freeze and have no idea what to do in their life because they're actually trapped in, I can't even think.
It's interesting how there can be, and I would have been a person that would have done this. I would have judged but you have the people who are in, say, emergency situations or intense situations that require action, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
so you have all the people that are the heroes, so to say, that, take action.
Yes. Like if there's a dead body or there's a body that is like lying lifeless, somebody's going to grab them and start doing CPR, and someone's going to stand at them staring.
And just stare at it. And so you'll have the broader conversation, like what's with the idiot just staring there when they could be doing something like directing traffic or something like that. They're just watching. I've heard those conversations. I've participated in those conversations. But I'm like, oh, that person is terrified. They're in freeze. Their threat system just went off and they're just gridlocked. It's not that they don't want to actively do something. It's usually something's going on in their system. And then this person over here that is active, maybe saving the person, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've just got it all together. Their fight response all of a sudden has mobilized them.
Like
and
we're like, oh, they're amazing. Yeah, they're great.
No, they just have a 4F fight response.
Yes. That is really helping them and looks really pretty and is really praised in this moment.
Yeah, and it works great in this moment, but in other relational moments probably can be very detrimental to the relational experience.
100%. Yeah. I love that you're bringing that up. And it's easy to shame ourselves for our own 4F response because when I was in depression, I had so much shame over that. Why can't I do anything? Why can other people get all of their schoolwork done and it's not a problem? Like when I was in high school, I was so sick. I'd been in a car wreck. My body was a mess. I had crazy hormone problems. And I was living with my mom, who's very mentally ill at that point. And now I can look back and be like, I was in freeze all the time. I was just constantly in freeze. So I felt shut down on the ability to get myself to figure out school on my own and figure out what to do. And so I just beat myself up all the time. Like why other normal people can do this and it's not a hard thing. Normal people can get through this and it's not hard for them. Normal, And so now the thing that I love about learning is when you learn, oh, I'm in freeze. Now you can do things to activate yourself out of it. Yeah. You don't have to live trapped. You don't have to be in the prison inside of yourself. Yeah. I know.
You can come out of aggression. You don't have to be in fight.
Yeah.
Like you can actually get to a place of peace and settledness.
Yeah. Now I look back, anxiety is a 4F response, like having panic attacks. That's going into fight or flight energy. And depression is freeze. So all of those make so much sense. We need to have kindness for ourselves and then do things to help us actively come out of it. So for freeze, some of my friends will put their hands in really cold water or hold ice cubes for a few minutes because what it does is it helps bring the blood flow back to your extremities. And so that you start to actually move the blood flow out of the panic center of your brain. Some people will, like sometimes when I'm in freeze, you squeeze my body all the way down and up to getting the blood flow back into your whole body. If you imagine freeze, like the blood flow like comes in to inwards. And so your legs and arms can go colder and things like that. So
yeah, that's good. I want to talk about fawn.
Hold on. What if we do another episode on fawn and what's the other one? Flight. Because there's so much to go into about each one that we could just cover it all.
Okay.
We
can do that. I think the point of this episode and the following episode is that the more that we understand these aspects of our humanity, the more that we can have grace and kindness and compassion for ourselves. We can have empathy for others. We can actually like show up in much more loving manners towards ourselves and towards other people when we understand a lot of the reasons that we don't have the capacity to love well, or we don't show up loving people well, or we find ourselves disconnected from people is because we just don't understand. We don't understand ourselves. We don't understand our human dynamics. And at the end of the day, a conversation like this doesn't lend its way to saying, hey, it's okay. Now you just get to live out of all these reactions because you can't control it. It's like, no, if you can understand it, then you can start understanding how to get out of it. You can start the process of healing it and being like, it's not that I'm a terrible person. It's that something needs care and attention and love and repair inside of it. And if I get to that, then I can show up entirely differently. Because I know that for both of us, these 4F responses have de-escalated immensely in so many ways. And we're able to feel so much more closer to each other and navigate relational conflict and life conflict in such better ways than we ever did before.
Yeah. A couple things that I do. We did an episode on narrating a while ago. And so one of the first things that I do is internally I recognize, oh, I'm in fight right now. My energy is mobilizing. It'll feel like I start to go from my feet up. It's like a shield. I can feel and it's the more you recognize the body sensations that happen with like anger, the body sensations that happen before you get frustrated, the body sensations that happen before you go into freeze. When I start to notice those, then I can know what to do. So I can feel this wall start to come up with fight.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it's energy that wants to be activated. So to get rid of fight, I might do heel stomps.
So that's where you stand up on your tippy toes
and you throw your heels down over and over and over again. And so you literally imagine releasing that intense energy into the ground.
I roundhouse kick kangaroos in the face. I don't even know what that means.
Kangaroos?
Where are those kangaroos?
Yeah.
But it's
what do you do in fight? I also normally walk away.
Yeah. I learned something from this this therapist that I met with one time where they had me grab a towel, twist it, bite down hard on it, and yell into it. And what that did is they're like, you need to get the energy out of your body. You can restore balance in your body if the energy can go somewhere. But if it has nowhere to land and go into,
it just feels trapped.
Yeah, it feels trapped. So that's one thing that I've done is I've found myself in a place where I could do that.
Yeah.
And then I come back, I'm like, oh, I got that overwhelming
feeling
energy out of me.
Yeah, I do that. Sometimes what I do is I actually switch subjects in my brain. This is what I do a lot of. That's what I was thinking about my friends who teach their son, like, if you're trying to get rid of a boner, think about math equations, and what they're doing, what happens is you're redirecting the blood flow in your body. That's what it is when you're like trying to get it out of your penis into a different area.
What a fantastic example.
It's just a real one.
Yeah, no.
If you have teenage kids, you're like,
no, it's real. It was
they
like
need to figure out what to do
high
with
school.
this.
We all took a thought about grandma so we could get up out of class and leave.
100%. So, but the same trick works when you're in fight. To start, like when you're mobilized energy, when you have that anxiety energy, you can start to do math equations. You can start spelling words. What it is it's getting the blood flow back to your logic center, out of your reaction center. So when we are in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, the blood flow is in our emotional reaction center. And as we pull it, even as we just narrate what it is, that's bringing the blood flow back to bringing our brains online so we can be making choices instead of just reacting out of our primal selves.
Yeah. What you're really doing is oftentimes what perpetuates our threat response is the thought of the threat that is existing. So even what you're talking about is taking our focus and taking it off the perceived threat that we have and reassigning all of my energy to something else. And then the threat can start going down because it's like, I'm not telling my body the threat anymore. I'm like, the math. I'm not threatened by the math. Anyways, we should wrap this.
Yes. So, if this has helped you at all, we have so many resources for you to be involved with. We have a father series that helps you work through father issues. We have the Compassion Project that helps you learn how to have self-compassion for why you do what you do, the needs that are driving you and what's going on. You can go to justinandabby.com.
Yeah. Sign up for our mailing list there if you want.
Mm-hmm. We have so many things that we are planning on doing this year. So get on our mailing list so you can hear about them.
Yes. And for the love of all that is holy, we are on YouTube. And if you are not watching this on YouTube,
come find us.
And if you are,
so you can see my gangly toes.
Smash the subscribe button. Smash it. Hit it.
Smash it?
Poke
Well, don't
it.
smash it. You want them to be able to watch again.
Hit the subscribe button. And subscribe now.
Subscribe now.
Yeah, and then share it. Share it.
And next week, we'll talk about flight and fawn. Ooh.
Whoa. I'm going to wear my cardigan sweater for that one.
Me too.
I don't even know what that means.
We'll be wearing sweaters.
I don't even know what that means. We'll see you next week.